everyone and welcome back to the channel for another build. Now we're going back to our biome build. So currently so far I have done 4 builds of the different biomes in my valley, and today I'm going to be doing the Peaceful Meadow. Now I originally wasn't going to rebuild this biome, it wasn't on my to-do list, but because I basically had to destroy 80% of it to do my theme park dream snap, I just thought I'm going to wipe the whole thing clean and give it a refresh and move some things around. And actually at the end of the build I'll talk all about it, but I actually am really happy I did this. I'm much happier with how it looks after this build than it was previously, so that is what we're going to be doing today, and let's get started. So the first thing I did when I went in is, as you can see, I placed a lot of my houses down on the beach. That's my last biome to decorate, so I knew I could just kind of use it as a junkyard for now. But I went in and started placing some of the houses for this biome in spots where I felt like they would work. I did move everything around really, because I originally had the mushroom house in this back corner, and I had this little alcove section was they kind of like Mickey and Friends village, and actually I decided to just completely change it up and move it around, and I thought I will see how it goes. If I'm not a fan of it, I can just chop and change it as I'm building, but I actually do stick with where I put all the houses. I kind of got them in their locations, and then actually once I started putting in pathways and figuring out the layout, I actually was really happy with how everything was structured. So once I got all the main buildings in, I kind of just moved all the other smaller items around, got everything organized before I started putting in my pathways, and also putting out a bunch of items that I knew I'd be using in the build. I find this really helpful to be able to see what I have and what I'm going to be using. I used pretty much all the same stuff I used when it was decorated previously. I added a few things and changed a few things, but I knew I had pretty much everything I needed. I didn't have to buy too much, so I kind of popped all that out and put in this big fountain and got started. And once I placed everything out, I started working kind of like my Mickey and Friends village as well as the fountain area. That was kind of my 2 spots to start with. Fountain area I knew would help me with mapping out my pathway, as this was like a central piece of the build. I did have this in my meadow previously, so I already knew where it was going to go and how I was going to decorate it, but I knew that I could then start mapping out the pathways and getting an idea of where everything was going to go and how it was all going to be laid out in that sense. Now in the Mickey Friends town, I wanted it to feel quite built up, like kind of a cozy little town section, its own little area. So I did use a lot of pathway to kind of block out the area and have it so that all the houses were connected by this kind of thick pathway area. And I put in one of our new Mickey and Minnie fountains in the middle. I love this fountain, it's so adorable, and all the colours on it match perfectly with these 3 houses. And once I'd kind of blocked that in, I started decorating around my fountain. This is what I did with my fountain previously. I personally don't like this kind of dark browny grey bit we have going around the bottom of this fountain. I feel like it just looks unnecessary. So what I have always done with it is surrounded it by flowering bushes and some other bushes around the outside, as I love how this centerpiece of it looks with the actual water in the statue, but the rest of it I like to cover with a lot of foliage, and I think once you do that, it kind of elevates it and makes it look really, really lovely. Then once I put in all the flowering bushes, I did add some of the new archways that we got in Star Path, as well as some benches underneath and just some cherry blossom trees on either side. I just love this setup. I think it's really cute, and it's a really good use of these archways to kind of round it all out and make the fountain look less kind of huge, honestly, and out of place. Kind of just blocks it all together well. And then I started figuring out where I wanted some of the items to go, so I started moving them to kind of the sections I knew that I would be using them in, just so I could then see what I had for each area and make sure I didn't miss anything. Next to some of the houses in the Mickey and Friends area, I did this trick that I really like to do, which is to make planter boxes out of the bordered leaf pathway. I don't know when I came up with this, I just kind of did it a long time ago, and I think I did it in a farm build maybe. I can't remember, but I did place some of those around the houses. I love to do this and just add a bunch of the different bushes and flowers and things like that. Sometimes I do add the naturally spawning flowers, but I didn't for these ones just because I wanted them to kind of all tie together and be quite similar and more of like a green vibe rather than colourful. So I placed some of those in between the gaps, which made it look a lot more built up. Before I went in and added a lot of trees around the outside. I wanted it to be quite enclosed in around the edges, so you kind of blocked out as much of the beach below as possible. I kind of like to keep it so that my builds are kind of hidden and you don't see too much of it below. Obviously it's kind of inevitable you're going to see the beach, but I wanted to cover it as much as I could, so I used a lot of different trees. I used some of the oaks as well as some of the red trees. I wanted to keep a very sort of plain green vibe in here, but adding the red trees just gave Mickey's house a bit more of a pop of colour to match the colourful houses in this spot. As well as adding lots of bushes and flowers around the back of these trees, I also added in a little craftable wooden table with some wooden chairs. I do go in later and add a bunch of like food and things onto this, but I really liked having this in here because it really feels like somewhere that Mickey and friends would kind of sit and hang out and have a meal together. I just think it made the area a lot more cozy and a lot more lived in, which I really loved. And then I went around the pond where I have Donald's boat. I decided to put Donald's boat in here rather than on the beach because I just think it's a perfect pond for where he is. He's really close to all of other Mickey and Friends characters, so it kind of made sense. Obviously with Daisy coming soon, if her house is another kind of boat or something that I'm not going to be able to easily fit in this area, I am going to have to rework it just so I can keep Donald and Daisy together. But I'm hoping it'll be kind of like a nice quaint little pink house that I can squeeze in next to Minnie's, just so I can have them all together. Would be really, really sweet. But I just thought I'd pop Donald here for now so he's close to everyone else, and decorate all around this pond with lots of foliage. In this back corner section, there was a big open space. As I was saying, as if Daisy comes, this is a perfect spot of where her house will probably go. But for now, I thought I'll use one of these craftable Mickey water towers just because it's really close to Mickey and Friends. It just makes sense to be kind of in the background of their little village they have, and it was kind of a good space filler in this area. But for the rest of it, I just added in a bunch of rocks and bushes and flowers just to kind of fill that area up for now, as I knew that it was potentially going to be something I was using later on when we get more characters. Now, sticking to the same side, I wanted to do the pathway coming down from the main staircase and start kind of paving underneath where our well and Goofy's stall was. I didn't want to do anything too kind of extravagant for the well in this biome. I wanted it to be kind of just natural and simple in there. Some biomes I like to do the well a little bit more extravagant and kind of like a centerpiece, whereas in here, because there are so many houses and big items in here, I wanted to keep the well quite simple. So I just put some of the paving underneath it, and I just decorate around it with, again, more bushes and trees, just to kind of keep it in with the natural look and make it look like a very kind of simple well that you would just see in a cozy village. After this, I started decorating around the base of the main staircase. I didn't want to do anything too extravagant here either, just because we do have that massive fountain in the middle, the craftable one. It is, you see it straight away, it is the thing that catches your eye. So I wanted what was at the bottom of the stairs to not take away from that. So I just went with a couple of the Beauty and the Beast water fountains, just because they're nice to have at an entranceway, and a couple of flower planters, and then again lots of bushes, just to kind of fill this space up and make it just seem quite beautiful when you're coming in. Before I headed the pathway round to the left, where I started working on the left hand side, and I started off with Merlin's house. Merlin's house is quite small, and I just felt like it fit into this spot really well. I might go in later and kind of adapt how his house looks, but for now I just felt like I really wanted it to blend into the scenery, but also include a couple of things that were kind of related to his character, but kind of having it fit in to be kind of like this little cottage that you'd find in a forest was kind of the atmosphere I was going for with his house. So I decided to kind of plop it here, put the pathway around it, and then start decorating around it with similar bushes and trees as the rest of the biome, so it all matches. Then once I'd finished all that foliage and done Merlin's kind of area, I started extending the pathway over to the mushroom house. I love the mushroom house, it's one of my favourite house skins in the game, and I just feel like the meadow just, it works so well with it. I did kind of play around with having it in some different biomes. I did have it in the forest for a while and in the glade for a little bit, but I just felt like the meadow just really fits it so well, and having all the butterflies flying around when you're near it just kind of all ties together really lovely. So I wanted to make sure I included this in here. So I started extending the pathway between there and the main entrance, as well as between there and Merlin's, so you can kind of access everything easily. So the path was kind of dotted around this tiny little pond we have, but I wanted to make sure that we could access the meadow, and it would kind of lead to the exits out to the glade, as well as a pathway leading towards where my house is, which we will get to soon. But for now we are going to kind of focus on this pathing and making sure everything's mapped in. Now, something I really enjoyed about having the pathway kind of wrap around these ponds is that you can kind of really decorate around the edges, make it look very natural. Adding a lot of the different meadow grass really helps just bring that kind of atmosphere and just makes it look very overgrown and very rural, which I really like. It's like a cute cottagey village, and that was kind of the atmosphere I was going for. But I also obviously made sure to use some ferns and things like that to allow me to kind of access the ponds when I need to go there to fish certain fish. So there is always access in there. Ferns are a great way to kind of still have that outer barrier of bushes but make it accessible. You don't want to have to be constantly moving the different bushes and trees and things when you want to go and fish, so ferns are a great way to do that. Once I'd done all that, I started kind of adding things to the ponds. I wanted the ponds to be very overgrown, have a lot of cattails and a lot of reeds, plus also some of the Glade of Trust light up water lilies. These are just beautiful in all the biomes and they really give off a mystical feel, which I felt really fit in the meadow. It kind of really suited the atmosphere in here. So I did place a bunch of those in all 3 ponds in here. After adding a lot more trees and furniture around, I kind of started to figure out where I wanted all the items in the kind of garden part of the mushroom house to go. This house had quite a big garden space. I knew there was a lot of items I wanted to use. I did use when I previously designed it, so I wanted to kind of include everything again. So I started mapping out where everything was going to go, how it could be all fit in here as well as you could still access it. I wanted it to make sure that you could walk around everything and access all the different things in the garden space. Once I placed all the furniture in the spots that I thought I wanted them to be, I do go in later and add some other stuff and move some things, but for the most part everything was where I wanted it to be. I then obviously put lots of trees around the back to again try and block out as much of the beach as possible, and then added a bunch of rocks and bushes and flowers to kind of tie the whole garden together and give it this sort of surrounding barrier, so you could tell it was kind of tied to the mushroom house and was part of it, and it worked really well to kind of make it look like its own garden. After working on the mushroom house, it was the final section of the build, which is this kind of corner alcove section above the glade, which is where I decided to put my own house. I kept forgetting to actually give my own house a location in the valley. I kept decorating for all the other houses except my own, but I do currently have the flowery summery house skin on my house. I don't always keep it as this, sometimes I change it up, but that is the one I have currently, and obviously this one works really well in the meadow. But I knew that kind of any house skin I decide to put on it could work in the meadow. The meadow is kind of one of those biomes where lots of different houses would work, so I decided to have that one on there for now, but I will change it up at some point and I think it will still look cute and still work. But for now I just wanted to decorate the entranceway with lots of trees and flowers. I wanted it to be really covered over and closed in, so you kind of have to walk in to discover everything in there. And something that I did use in my garden is Beast Greenhouse. I did originally used to have a flower garden for Beast Greenhouse, so I had this flower garden you'd come into and there was loads of flowers planted and loads of different tools and things like that, but I just felt like the beauty of the greenhouse got lost a little bit after a while, because you could only see the front part of it, you couldn't see the back, and you couldn't see all the detailing of the actual greenhouse itself. And because it's such a beautiful item that we got with Beast, I really wanted it to be kind of appreciated and be somewhere that I'd constantly see it and remember how nice it is. And next to my house is obviously one of the places I'm gonna see the most in the game. Every time I load on, I will see it, so I decided to place it in here to kind of look as though it's the greenhouse in my own garden. And I actually really love that I went with that idea. I think it looks really sweet here. I may go back and add it as an actual flower garden kind of greenhouse area one day, but for now I'm really enjoying kind of seeing it very often and being able to appreciate it, because it is one of the nicest items in the game in my opinion. Once I decorated everything, it was starting to get a lot darker, and I then went in and placed in, as you can guess, lots of melted candles. What a shock! So I dotted melted candles around the biome just to kind of bring a bit of an extra warm glow. I wanted to not have too many street lights in here. I wanted it to feel very natural with the lighting I used. So I did use some street lanterns on the entrances and exits, but for the most part I wanted to kind of keep everything lit up really naturally, and the melted candles are a great way to get that warm glow as you're walking around. Once I'd done that, I did go into the oven and I made a bunch of sweet treats and food to put on the table in the kind of Mickey and Friends little table area. I did use some Mickey waffles and some cupcakes and things like that, just things that made sense for the characters. And off camera I did add some critters into the critter home by Mickey's house. I just think it was a really cute touch because it matches his house perfectly, and it just made sense for them to have a lot of critters running around. So I did do that off camera, but I did that as well as finishing off with the melted candles around the rest of the biome to make sure it was all lit up and looking beautifully glowy. I did still have quite a lot left on my item limit, so I knew I could kind of not be sparing with the amount of melted candles I used. So the build is finished. This is the final build. So this is me up in the plaza, and as I come down the main staircase you can obviously see that massive fountain in front of me. I did make it sunset so that all the lights would be lit, but if we come down first on the left hand side, it's obviously very overgrown and very floral, and you can see Donald's boat ahead of me in the pond, and on the left we have the well with Goofy's stall. Just a really simple layout. I didn't want anything too extravagant. On the exit to Dazzle Beach, I used one of the big ancient trees just to kind of fit that space, and then obviously the Mickey water tower in that section at the back. I may use this, as I said, in the future for another home. Daisy will probably go here if she has a home on land, and I will kind of rearrange things how they need to be to fit characters in. As we head round to the middle, obviously you can see the two fountains on either side, which look really sweet here, and obviously the archways on either side of this main fountain. They're just really sweet spots to sit in, and I just really like how they kind of all match and tie together. We then have Mickey Village, so we've got the craftable archway over the top, and as we head in you can see there are lots of critters who are now in that companion house next to Goofy and Mickey's. We've got our planter boxes on the middle of their houses and on the left hand side of Minnie's, just with lots of flowers and foliage in there. We have the beautiful new fountain in the middle to kind of tie it all together, and then their little cozy seating area to look over at the ocean down below. I just think this is such a sweet spot for them to sit and hang out, so I really loved putting that in there. The pond is nice and beautifully lit. We can obviously see Donald's boat there and one of the swan boats from the Star Path. I love these swan boats, they're super cute. As we head around to the left, we obviously have some more big ancient trees to kind of block out and make it look very overgrown, and a little ice cream cart on the left. Then we have Merlin's house. I didn't decorate this too much, I wanted it to be quite simplistic, so I did just use the ancient pillar and some lights and his telescope just to kind of link it all together but not make it too blue. I wanted it to still match the green vibe of the whole biome. As we head round, we then obviously have our mushroom house. So I used some pumpkin vine lamps to light up the entrance. These work perfectly with this house, and I added a lot of kind of rustic cottagecore items. So that I used the cart and the bunch of flowers, and then in the back in the garden you can see Anna's enjoying it here, but we have a picnic blanket and lots of books, some instruments, some easels, a lovely painting table, which I like because I can craft in this biome whenever I want now. I kind of like to include a crafting table in each biome. It really helps when you're running around doing things, but I do have that in there and it kind of all ties together really well and just looks like a really cozy and creative space in there. We then obviously have our exit down to the glade, which again is very covered over, and then we obviously have the entrance to where my house is. So this I've made really overgrown, kind of mimicking the rest of the biome, and I did use 2 of the fruit trees on either side of my house. I love these because they give a beautiful sparkle. We then obviously have Beast Greenhouse, which I'm really glad is here now. You can definitely appreciate seeing it more when you're kind of seeing it constantly when you're by your home, so I feel like I'm really enjoying having this here. Front of the house, I've just got a cute little yellow bike. We need more of these bikes in different colours. I would love some other colours and some other similar things. That is such a cute thing to kind of put in front of people's homes. So these are the final shots of the biome. I obviously wasn't planning to redo my meadow, it was not on my list, but after the theme park dream snap I did decide to just start over, start fresh, and I'm actually really glad I did. I don't regret it at all. I think the layout is so much better now. It seems a lot cozier, a lot less built up, which was kind of the atmosphere I wanted to go for. I wanted it to be very natural, and my plaza is more of a city landscape, so I wanted it to be like you were going from a city to a kind of cozy forest, which I think is what I managed to achieve. I did use a lot of foliage and things like that to kind of keep it covered over, but I'm really glad with where I put each house. I think the sections work really well, and I'm overall very, very happy with how it turned out. So that is the final build. I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know if there's anything that you think I should potentially add or change. I'm more than happy to hear your suggestions. As I said, this wasn't a kind of build I was planning, but I do have one biome left, which obviously, as you know from the start, is my Dazzle Beach. That is my last biome to get the whole valley completed, and then I can do a valley tour for you. So make sure you like and subscribe to see that, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.